So now, without further ado, I would like to welcome our speaker, Christine Smith, who is the Director of Client Success at Sampler. Christine is a consumer packaged good industry veteran and has experienced burnout firsthand. By sharing her story and the tools she has learned along the way, she hopes to destigmatize burnout and other mental health issues. Welcome, Christine.
Hi, and welcome to everybody. And of course, here we go. So a little bit about me. As mentioned, my name is Christine Smith, and I've been in the consumer packaged goods industry for nearly 25 years. I was formerly in marketing at Nestle. I was VP of Client Service for the Insights company Nielsen, which is now known as Nielsen IQ. And I joined Sampler, which is a digital sampling company based in Toronto, as their head of client success earlier this year. And I'm going to start with a bit of a disclaimer. I have personally had a mindfulness practice for about 15 years now, and I've taken a couple of intensive courses in mindfulness-based stress reduction. I have a certificate in positive psychology and one in positive education from Laurier University here in Ontario, but I'm definitely not an expert. And I learn about this every single day, and it's something that I have to continue to cultivate. In fact, I'm having a stressful couple of weeks, and I had to put some stuff into practice today, including I have some of my hobbies sitting beside me for when I have a few minutes to spare, and I can give myself some positive energy. So the objective of today is to share some concepts and some resources, but I want you to know it's only the tip of the iceberg. And I also want everyone's commitment that this is a safe place to share before we start. So I know it's going to be a rather big group by the time everybody joins, but sometimes some really personal things and emotional things are shared in this session. And I'd love for us all to consider this a safe space to share those things. And by all means, as mentioned, if you've got questions, thoughts, experiences you want to share along the way, you can use the chat, you can put your hand up, you can unmute yourself. I'd love for this to be collaborative in sharing experience as well. Okay, and so before we start, I'd like to do a quick exercise. So sit up straight in your chair, put your feet flat on the floor. I'll do that myself too. Right, release your shoulders from your ears. Unclench your jaw. Remove your tongue from the roof of your mouth. And take 3 deep breaths. In through your nose. And out through your mouth. In through your nose. And out through your mouth. In through your nose and out through your mouth. I don't know about you, but I feel like my shoulders have come down about a foot off of my ears. And we tend to hold on to stress physically in ways that we don't even realize. As an example, at my peak of burnout, I cracked a molar, not once, not twice, but 3 times. I was definitely holding that stress in my jaw. So everybody should have access to the course workbook. It is in the chat. And we'll be using it for some of the exercises over the next hour-ish, and as well as for some homework that you'll have after the session. There are also some notes pages that include web links. So don't feel like you need to write everything down. So when I introduced myself, you may have wondered why I'm leading a session on energy and balance and not something more related to my professional experience. And the short answer is I have needed all of these tools myself in the past and pretty badly. And as I mentioned, I still need them today. I've long been an evangelist for a balanced lifestyle. I've taught iterations of this workshop for years in professional environments. But about 3 years ago, I ended up in a very stressful professional and personal situation, and I didn't take care of myself. I was doing a really great job of, like the metaphor goes, putting the oxygen mask on everybody else, and I didn't put it on myself first. And unlike times in the past where I had caught myself and had been able to course correct, this time I let it go too far, and eventually I did experience true burnout. What did that look like? I couldn't get out of bed in the morning, and if I did, it was often just to move to the couch. If I made it to work, I'd often start crying as soon as I walked through my office doors. And I'd cry for almost any reason, and definitely for no reason. And I think the thing that made me realize that something really major was going on besides the crying was that I hated things that I had previously loved the best, like mentoring people. Mentoring is the thing that makes me come to work every day, and I didn't want to talk to people. I was also snappy and short-tempered, which just isn't me. And I later learned that these are all symptoms of burnout. And I had no choice but to take a break from work. And thankfully, I had the support of a fantastic manager and was able to take the time that I needed to start to put things back together. But it's been a long journey, and I pulled in all of my resources from friends, some of whom I actually see on the call tonight, to professionals. And I have to be purposeful about managing my energy every single day. And my story is sadly not uncommon. And here are a few more examples that perhaps you might be able to relate to. So this is Joanna Pira. She is the founder of a period care subscription box called Callie. And she was working full-time as a CFO, consulting for another company on nights and weekends, was an adjunct professor, co-chair of a gala, all while building a business plan for Callie. And I suspect that some of you can actually relate to that level of busyness. She didn't realize it, but she was burning out. And she said there were signs, but she didn't see them. And her learning from that was that if you don't slow down, the universe will make you. So for her, what that looked like is she fell down a flight of stairs, and she didn't have a choice other than to take time off. And this is Talisa Daughtry, and she is the founder and CTO of Flytechnista. And I'm going to read you the description, or the description of her company, because it sounds super cool. So Flytechnista is a mobile app and community designed explicitly for the empowerment and enrichment of multicultural women and girls to successfully navigate, accelerate, participate, and thrive in 21st century career opportunities across STEM fields, leadership, and entrepreneurship. I feel like I really want to be this woman's friend. She sounds like she's amazing. So for her, her turning point came a few years ago when she was doing everything and people thought that she was, as she said, killing it. And in fact, doing all of those things was killing her, literally. She rarely said no. She rarely slept. She almost never listened to her body's warning signals. Until she ended up in the emergency room, and kind of like my tooth story, but a much worse version. She ended up in the emergency room 3 times in the course of 1 month. So she knew that she had to make a lot of changes, because not only did her own health being impacted, but the longevity of her business also depended on her health. And this last story I'm going to share with you is actually the founder of the company that I work for. So this is Marie Chevry-Schwartz, and she is the founder of Sampler, and she has also been very public about her own burnout story and has actually shared it on LinkedIn. So if you do a little search on Marie, you will find a blog article about her burnout story. And the highlights of it, or the lowlights of it, were that she'd been working really hard for 6 years, building the brand and building the company, and usually being the face of the company to the world at large. She considered herself always on, always smiling. Wherever the company needed her to be, she would go. And she says that her family and friends would often say, "Where are you this week? And how long are you here for this time? And where do you live these days?" And again, I'm pretty sure that you founders out there can probably relate to that. She says she loved every minute of it, and I don't doubt that for a second. And she says that she doesn't regret any moment of it, but at some point it took a turn, and she suffered from burnout. For her, what that meant was waking up every day crying, spending a lot of her days pretending to be her usual self, but being foggy, being disorganized, and her memory felt, as she says, gone. And she would come home crying. And so it's a lot of the same sort of experience that I had. And she describes that situation as being one of suffering terribly. So one of the consistent themes that you'll hear when people talk about their burnout is that they weren't listening to their bodies. So let's look at what some of the signs of burnout might look like. Okay, so in the first phase of burnout, you might begin to experience the predicted stresses of life. So it's really important to identify that and start implementing positive coping strategies. The theory is that if you create good coping strategies at this point, you can continue in this honeymoon phase indefinitely. Life is about stress. You're not going to be able to get rid of the stress. It's all about how you're able to cope. Now, in the second stage of burnout, this begins with an awareness of some days being a little more difficult than others. You might find your optimism waning, and you might notice some common symptoms of stress affecting you physically, mentally, emotionally. So, for example, you might find yourself grinding your teeth at night like I was. You might be irritable. You might have headaches. You might be reducing your social interactions. In the third stage of burnout, that's chronic stress. And this is really a marked change in your stress levels, and it's something that you are experiencing on a very frequent basis, so almost daily. So you also might experience more intense versions of the symptoms that you saw in stage 2. You might be apathetic rather, or in denial of your problem. So this is like, oh, everything's fine, I'm fine, everything's fine. You may increase your alcohol or your caffeine intake. You might find yourself engaging in escapist activities such as watching TV, playing video games, maybe getting addicted to TikTok like I was. Now, stage 4, this is burnout itself. This is where symptoms become critical, and frankly, continuing as normal is not actually possible. It becomes really difficult to cope. And we all have our own unique limits of tolerance. And the key is that if you end up at this stage, you need to seek intervention. So symptoms might include chronic headaches, digestive issues, continuation or increase in those escapist activities, feeling empty inside, self-doubt, social isolation. I can certainly relate to a lot of those. And then the final stage of burnout is habitual burnout. And this means that the symptoms of burnout are so embedded in your life that you're likely experiencing a significant ongoing mental, physical, and/or emotional problem. And this is as opposed to periodically experiencing stress, which again, we all do. In this stage, you're also often experiencing chronic fatigue, both mental and physical, chronic sadness, depression. I was finally diagnosed with both depression and anxiety. And if anyone is interested in learning more, I found all this information on Calmer. It's in the documents that has been shared with you, and they have a lot of great resources. So I definitely would encourage you to take advantage of that. Okay, so that is burnout. Now, in a smaller setting, I would usually have everyone go away for a couple of minutes and take a quiz on work-life balance from the Canadian Mental Health Association. Instead, I highly recommend it at some time after the session that you take advantage of this quiz and see where you fall. But in the meantime, maybe we'll do a quick and dirty version of that exercise. And I don't know if you are familiar with how you use the annotation button, but if you look at the top of your screen, there's probably going to be something that looks like here you are viewing, probably doesn't say Maya Shankman, it probably says Christine Smith's screen. And you pull down the view options, there'll be an annotate, and then within that annotate window, you'll be able to use the stamp. If you can't figure it out, or if it doesn't look like that for you, don't worry. Hopefully we can just get a critical mass of enough people to make this exercise valuable. Okay. So for now, where do you think you would fall? Do you feel like you're well balanced? So you're on the right track? Do you think that things are under control, but just barely? Or do you already know that you're out of balance? So if you could take your annotate pen and put a heart or a star or some sort of mark beside where you think you are, that would be great. On the right track, out of balance, Somebody's way out of balance. They have circled that baby. Okay. Well, it's lovely to see a few people thinking that they're on the right track, but you're definitely in the right place if you're feeling otherwise. So the objective of today is to help you with that. So thank you. Love to see all those annotates. Let me see if I can now get rid of that. And of course, now I'm the one who can't get the thing to. Here we go. There we go. Oh, now I'm annotating. Okay, thank you. All right, so the focus of this session is to develop an understanding of what is meant by energy imbalance and how we can work to achieve it on a daily basis. So it's about building awareness of how important positive energy imbalance is and recognizing it that this is a very personal journey. What works for one person may differ significantly from what works for somebody else. And I'd love for you to develop a consciousness around energy imbalance and what it might mean for yourselves and others, perhaps ultimately being able to support each other to achieve and maintain it. So I'm sorry if you signed up for this session expecting it to be a lesson on work-life balance. Work-life balance is about managing your time. The amount of time that we have is fixed. It's finite, and realistically, particularly during this time and particularly as founders, all parts of our lives tend to bleed together, right? That's real, that's reality. Energy, on the other hand, it can be expanded, it can be renewed through discovering and establishing specific rituals. And these are behaviors that are practiced and they're scheduled into our lives. And we need to find ways to recharge physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, to restore our energy levels. Okay, so we can conceive of our energy along two axes. One is the quality of it, so negative to positive, and the other is the quantity of it, so low to high. Negative and positive is pretty self-explanatory, but from the low to high, you can think of low energy being quiet, introverted, slowed down, and high energy is more manic, both the negative and the positive side of mania. So it's a very energetic state of feeling. So we're going to do another exercise as a group, and I'm going to ask you to plot some emotional states on the graph that I just showed you. And we'll use annotate again, and I think maybe my co-presenter can help me with the clearing the annotate button when we're finished. So we'll use the annotate button again, but this time pick whichever stamp you like. And there's no right or wrong answer. So we're going to go back to plot on these emotional states on this graph. So is it, oh, sorry, go back this way. Is it a negative or positive emotional state, or is it high or low? So plot it in a quadrant. So let's start with happy. Where would you plot happy? Got a couple of answers, high, positive. Oh, there you go. Seem to have consensus on the happy. Excellent. Okay, great. Thank you. If you wouldn't mind clearing that for me. Thank you. How about embarrassed? Where would you plot embarrassed? Okay, got a little bit more difference on that one. Yeah, definitely on the negative side of the graph, but for some people that's a high energy state, for some it's a low. Judy is writing all over the page. Awesome, thank you. you wouldn't mind clearing that. What does scared look like? Where would you plot scared? Okay. And we've got a bit of more of a range on that one. Excellent, thank you. Okay, where would you plot challenged? Where would you plot challenged? Okay. Interesting. Okay. So for some people that's high energy, for some people that's low, but generally positive. Okay. Excellent. Next one. How about bored? Where would you plot bored? Low negative. Okay. That's pretty consistent. Awesome. Okay, thank you. We'll do just a couple more. Where would you put plot determined? Positive. Okay, high positive. Yeah, a little bit more spread out. Okay, excellent. And let's pick one more. Where would you put plot delighted? That one's pretty consistent. Oh, Judy. Awesome. Well, thank you. Okay, that's great. So the objective of this exercise was to show you that what can be a negative stressor for some people may actually be positive for others. Challenge is the word that most often comes up as being debated. So I was really curious to see what it would look like for this group. Some people find this challenge to be invigorating. And it does seem to me that this group as a whole seems to find challenge invigorating, whether that's a high energy or a low energy event. You guys are all putting that on the positive side of the spectrum. I certainly have seen groups where that actually ends up on the negative side of the spectrum. I think the other one that was really interesting to me was bored. You all put that on the negative side of the spectrum. And I have to say that one of my goals when I was in my recovery phase from my burnout was actually achieving a state of boredom. I had been so busy and so active and all the time doing something that I needed for my own recovery and repair to actually enter a state of boredom. And now I really appreciate the moments that I have where I have a little bit of boredom. So all that to say, neither is right or wrong. And what's really important is that you understand what that emotional state is for you. So let's talk a little bit more about each of these zones and these quadrants. So in the high positive energy zone, this is where you are at your peak performance. Life is great. This is really where you are at your most effective. In the refresh zone, you still have positive energy, but it's all about recovery and refueling. Oh, I just went backwards. There we go. In the endure zone, this is where you have high negative energy. And the word for me that most comes to mind in endure zone is survival. And then finally, exhausted. And the exhausted zone is where you experience burnout. You mentioned, I mentioned Marie and I both saying that we needed to sleep all the time, finding no joy in things that we previously loved to do. And this is a really crappy place to be. So let's see if we can avoid getting in the exhausted zone, or at least figure out a way out of the exhausted zone. See, the good news is that once you're in a zone, it's not like you're there forever. So you're in the endure zone. How do you think you can move to the effective zone? Now, if you want to type something in chat, or if you want to unmute yourself, how do you think you can move from endure to effective? And I'll take this as an opportunity to have a sip of water. We have a shy group tonight. Any ideas?
think everyone is thinking. Deep in thought. Okay, I see something from Jeff.
Okay.
Find the positive aspect of the challenge.
Okay, yeah.
No
I type
problem.
C. Craft or create something. Yeah. Break a challenge into smaller pieces. Excellent. All great ideas. Okay, great. Yeah. I think you've hit on something. So you do need to do something to get out of that box. What I want you to understand is you first have to travel through refresh. So refresh could be crafting something. It could be breaking something into smaller pieces. It could be finding a positive aspect of the challenge. So those are all great answers. So if you have to move through refresh, and if you don't, like if you just try to muscle through, which honestly was in my head what I was supposed to be doing, and I was so disappointed I couldn't just muscle through. Working out, thanks, Judy. You're going to end up exhausted. You're going to end up in that exhausted zone. And sometimes the move might be quick, and it might happen without you even really realizing it. So when I was back in the work environment, I would go and walk over to somebody's desk who I really enjoyed talking to. And I knew that they would give me positive energy, and that would really help. Other times it might need to be more scheduled. So something like working out. And the other thing that I really learned was that some things that worked really well yesterday don't necessarily work today. I had that kind of a day yesterday, in fact, literally. So it's a good thing to have a few go-tos in your toolkit. Similarly, it's not possible to move from exhausted to effective without first moving through that refresh zone. And again, it doesn't have to be big and it doesn't have to be hard, but you do have to make a step back in a stop in that refresh zone in order to get back to being effective. So this is what we're going to create a plan for today. Okay, so sometimes it's hard to notice when you or the people around you are starting to get into those negative zones. So let's talk a little bit about what it might look like or feel like when someone is in those zones. So again, unmute yourself, use chat. If you're in the effective zone, what might that look like or feel like if you were in the effective zone? How do you feel that high positive energy in your body? And one of the words that comes to mind for me is buzzy. I feel like buzzy or tingly in my body. What else? What do you think? Liz, Tracy, great answer.
Sense of accomplishment.
Sense of accomplishment, great answer. Yep, excited. Calm, yeah. I love that it can be excited and it can be calm. I think those are both great answers. Yeah, so buzzing, I mentioned, happy, energized, proactive, like that's how you feel. That's how you act when you're in that zone. How about when you are in refresh? What might that look like or feel like? Creative. Okay, yeah. Thanks, Tracy. So this is a low, positive energy. Rested. Yes, exactly.
I usually feel renewed.
Renewed. Yeah, that's a great word. Eager to get going again. There you go. Love that. Yeah, it's quieter. It's more reflective. It's those again, those quiet moments. Okay, how about let's talk on the negative side of the balance sheet there. How about endure? What does that look like, or what might that feel like in your body? So high negative energy, heavy, yeah, exhausted.
Struggle.
Yeah.
Struggle.
Struggle. Yep, that's a great word. Anxious, yes. Soul tired, Tracy. Oh boy, yeah, I can relate. Repetitive, yes. Getting up and just doing it all again. Overwhelmed. They're really sad words, right? Yeah, it's hopeless. Yeah, they're just really sad words. Yeah, for sure. Those are all, yeah, stressed out. Exactly, Annabelle. Okay, now let's tackle the last one. What does it look like or feel like in the exhausted zone? So this is where it's negative energy and low energy. Bone tired. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Dreadful. Completely done. Done. Yeah. Yep. Done. Yeah. Drained. Yep.
Expired.
Expired. Yep. That's a great word. Great word. Defeated. Yep. For me, it was complete withdrawal. Complete withdrawal. Awesome. Okay. Now I asked you to do that, to think about what it might look like and might feel like for yourself in various places on that grid. Because again, it's really easy to not pay attention and all of a sudden find yourself in a place that you don't want to be. So if you want, now or in after the session, there is a place on page 2 of the workbook, and we could probably put that back into the chat. I'm not sure if that actually stays there if you just joined. There's a place on page 2 in the workbook where you can type that in.
Yep, I'm going to drop it in the chat again for those new people who joined us.
Thank you. Okay. All right. So we can think about our energy being like a leaky bucket. And when we encounter energy drainers in our lives, the energy flows out. But the good news is that you can keep refilling that blanket bucket. So you don't have to run out of energy. But you have to remember to refill that bucket. And that's what the objective is today, of today is to create a plan just for that, to refill that leaky bucket. What is super important is that you're aware of what fills your bucket and what drains you so that you can keep that bucket mostly full. And of the utmost importance is to recognize when your bucket is starting to get empty. So again, you think about those feelings on that negative side of that plot, how that heaviness in your body, that exhaustion, like start to feel that at the beginning so that you can start putting things back in your bucket. So energy can be expanded and renewed through discovering specific rituals. And so these are behaviors that are practiced and they're scheduled into our lives. Similarly, we should be aware of the things that make our energy flow out. And the biggest learning that I had was that all of this had to be something that was planned and cultivated. And if you think that it's going to happen naturally, particularly when you're undergoing periods of extreme stress, it just won't. You absolutely will not make it to the yoga studio, or you will not, give yourself the 15 minutes writing in your journal in the morning. Like none of those things will happen if you don't plan it. So we're going to take a minute. And again, in the energy and balance workbook that is in the chat, we're going to think about the negative side of that balance sheet first. Spend about a minute thinking about the things in your life that detract from the positive balance that you're hoping to achieve. This could be work, this could be home. So it's on page 3 of the workbook. I will set up a timer for 1 minute if you want to have a little go at that. Love it when the fire truck goes by in the middle of the session. Okay. Does anybody have anything that they would like to share in the chat, or take yourself off mute in terms of energy drainers? Often it's a really valuable experience to hear that other people are going through the same things that you're going through.
Negative people in your life.
Oh, yeah. I call those the emotional vampires. Yep.
Envious people.
Oh, yes. A more emotional vampire. Anybody else? Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. Okay. Now let's come do some of the fun stuff. Let's spend about a minute thinking about what builds our positive energy. And so it could be something physical like sports or sleep, very important, sleep. It can be something mental like reading or learning something new. There we go. It can be emotional like family or friends, and it can be spiritual like going to church, meditating, or being in nature. So again, you'll find the spot on page 3 in the workbook. And please share some ideas in the chat. This is a fun one to share. Puppy cuddle, sleep, shopping. Sorry, I missed some. These are good. Shopping, sleep, puppy cuddles, silence, sunshine, a bike ride. Those are great. Really good hugs. Love that one.
Positive conversation.
Yeah, positive conversation. And the energy of the people around you makes such a difference. And I think that's a really good reminder, actually. Thank you for sharing that we can be part of that for somebody else too. So our emotional state does have the ability to impact other people, and being really mindful of that, I think, is super important. I had a day last week where I said to somebody, I'm grumpy today, and I think I'm just gonna like take myself away so I don't let that impact you. And being aware of that and understanding that it could impact somebody else, I think, is really important. Team of working out, thank you. Yeah. Giving, volunteering. I would never be at work. Yeah, well, that's the dream, right? That is the dream. Not necessarily for everybody. That is, I guess, the other thing. It's not necessarily for everybody. Did anybody have any surprises? Things that they hadn't really realized were maybe a drainer or a driver for them?
Volunteering, I find that helps.
Volunteering. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Anytime you can focus on somebody else's needs, I think that can be a big difference. Great. Anything that anybody shared in the chat that you'd like to put into practice for yourself? I was thinking those puppy cuddles sounded pretty good. Okay. Oh. Competitors are a big drainer for me. Sorry, I missed that one, Tamara. Competitors are a big drainer for me. People that always want to compare or one up you. Yeah, sometimes I call it emotional bubble. Sometimes you need to try to create like an emotional bubble around yourself, but that requires you having an awful lot of positive energy in your bucket. So again, that it's really important to make sure you cultivate that situation for yourself. Yeah. Okay. So I know I've mentioned this several times, but I can't underscore it enough. Energy and balance is something that you need to cultivate. So I really recommend that you start small, that you be specific, that you schedule it and you be consistent. And I think the thing that I learned the most and was the most rewarding thing for me when I was going through my own burnout was ask for help. I was always the person that people went to for help. I suspect you guys are the same. And opening up that vulnerability and asking for help from other people was the most rewarding thing that happened to me during that experience. Now, if you remember Joanna, she was the founder of Cali Period subscription boxes. She took some time off. She reviewed everything that she was doing. She listed all of her commitments from the most fulfilling to the least. And then she reviewed how much time each of those commitments were taking up each week. And finally, she cut out the items at the bottom of her list. So sometimes you have to be a little bit ruthless and a little bit brutal and prioritize the things that are going to add that energy back into your bucket. And Talisa, she started a Female Founders and Leaders Wellness Day one Friday of every month. Again, I feel like I need to be friends with this woman. She made an intentional effort to commit to unapologetically reinvesting in her wellness and self-care. She books 30-minute therapy sessions, meditation, and 20-minute massages. Although 20 minutes, I feel like you need more than that. And she also blocks time in her calendar for rest, for creativity, and even for procrastination. There are no work or meeting times. On page 3 of your course workbook, you'll find a spot where you can make a commitment to one small act over the next week. And again, I'm going to put the timer up for a minute here so you can take the time to do that. Cuddle puppies while riding my bike. Jeff, I'm on board. If you're okay with it, like Jeff, I would love for you to share what you committed to in the chat. Again, it's totally up to you, but there's definitely power in sharing if you're comfortable to do so. And I'd also love for you to think about an accountability partner rather. So this could be a colleague, this could be somebody at home, this could be a friend, it could be family. It could be me. If you want it to be me, I'm happy to be an accountability partner. Tell them what the plan is and set a time to check back with them next week. So Tamo is going to work out and eat healthy. Excellent. Anybody else have anything they want to share?
I would do a little more meditation and maybe read a good book.
Love it. Love it. Yeah, I have twice a week, I have time in my calendar at lunch to do a loving kindness meditation for myself. Anybody else have anything they'd like to share? Have a weekly family Zoom call that helps ground me. Love it. Yeah. Great, Michelle. Make sure to be in bed by 11 p.m. Sleep is so important. Yep. Play day with my boys. Love it. Great, thank you. Okay. On page 4 and 5 of the workbook, you'll find a spot to create an action plan. So this is going to be your homework. Include items in it that are both helpful on a day-to-day basis and also things that you might employ when you're in a state of high stress. And that's what I've referred to as your self-intervention items. And depending on your level of intrinsic motivation, you may want to find a commitment partner to share your action plan with, or even just the fact that you have an action plan, and get them to check back in with you to make sure that you're keeping your commitments to yourself, because keeping commitments to other people is really easy. Keeping commitments to yourself is so much harder. You'll find in the book that there are a bunch of additional resources with links, so it'll take you to those resources, including Calmer that I mentioned earlier. We really whipped through the materials much faster than normal. So this is a great time to open up the floor to discussion if anybody has anything that they'd like to chat about. This is really hard to do on your own. The great news is that you have found a group of like-minded people in the people here in this meeting. And of course, you've started the commitment to yourself by joining the session today. So let's open the floor and see if anybody has anything they'd like to chat about. Will I be able to see the slides on my own? Yes, so they are in the workbook mirror. If you don't have the workbook, we can stick it back into the chat for you. I'll do that right now. I think other than maybe the, oopsie, try it again. I think other than, I'll do it in a second. I think other than maybe some what the visuals look like, the content is all the same.
Yep, I'll drop it in the chat again.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, happy to. Yeah, definitely, if there's anything in the materials that is helpful, I mean, that would be beneficial maybe to the group as well. Like, what did you find beneficial today? Okay. I'm going to put my contact information up so you can find me on LinkedIn. Christine Smith. I know it's there's a lot of us, so you can find me under CA Smith 107. Happy to chat with you offline. If there's, again, if you want a commitment partner, more than happy to be a commitment partner as well. Thanks very much for your participation today and for inviting me here. It's been lots of fun, and very best of luck to you on the rest of the courses.
Thanks so much, Christine. I really want to open it up to the floor because I know we have some extra time here. So just wanted to know if anyone wanted to share any personal experiences, anything that has worked with them or hasn't worked, or lessons they learned today. I really do encourage you all to share. Christine is a real resource here. So if you have any questions at all, please do feel free to ask her. This is really your time. Any situations you're encountering right now with your own businesses. Anyone want to share?
Hi, I can say something, yeah. I was just wondering, because Christine said something that I really resonated with. She said it's a lot easier to keep commitment to other people than to yourself. And like it's very strange, but it's also very true. And I wanted to ask you, in your line of work and, as you work with people on this topic, why do you think that is?
It feels like it's a little bit human nature. And it's something I certainly have found to be pretty universal. Yeah, the energy definitely flows out. I think, yeah, there's some rare occasions when I haven't found that to be true, which is why I always recommend thinking about a commitment partner, because they will keep you honest if you can't be honest with yourself. Not honest, but they will keep you to doing what you need to be doing for yourself.
Thank
yeah,
you.
it's a big thing. Yeah. Yeah, so Judy is saying the reduced daylight, sad. The impact of reduced daylight is draining and sad. So seasonal affect disorder. Did anybody else have suggestions on seasonal affect disorder? The lights working? I know that I also have one of those lights. Is there anything else anybody does about seasonal affect disorder? Or just if it's not that that high a level, it's the you get up in the morning and it's dark, and by the time you finish work, it's dark.
Kind of depressing, but I mean, I feel like with the holidays also coming, like that kind of cheers me up. It's something to look forward to. So maybe thinking about something that you can look forward to in this time can be helpful and rewarding.
Vacation goals, yeah. So it's a bit of a strange thing, but I booked myself an Airbnb for a couple of weeks from now. So I am going to be still working, but working from an Airbnb in Dundas, Ontario, away from my home, just so I have something different to look at. So it's because again, I work in my home office, and my bedroom is next door, and I basically walk from the kitchen to my bedroom to my home office every day. So even that little bit of being somewhere else. Judy, who is on the call, is a friend of mine, and I have worked from her basement before. Again, just to be somewhere different, to see something else. So Judy, come and work in my kitchen.
Yeah, I think the change of scenery can do wonders, because I myself, I'm at home working all the time, and I find like I have my laptop set up in my kitchen, and like there's no like division where like work stops. And I find that I'm working longer hours too, because I'm at home and emails are coming in. I'm sure everyone else is feeling the same way. Like, how do you draw the line? How do you create that boundary? Are there any tips for that specifically?
I have very specific rituals when it comes to work. So when I get up in the morning, I start work at a very specific time. I start at 8 o'clock. I walk into my office with my coffee in my hand. I don't start my coffee until I start my office day, and my breakfast in the other hand. And my first hour of the day is dealing with all the stuff that's happened when nobody else is online in the morning. The other thing I do, I know I'm very lucky. It certainly hasn't always been true for me. But at 5 o'clock at night, I shut that computer down, and I literally close the computer down, and I don't walk back into this room. So this room is dedicated to that thing. I could not be the kind of person who has their office in their bedroom, because I would be needing to go back to my computer. So it's really, for me, creating a very specific boundary and a very specific physical act associated with work that says I'm starting and I'm finishing. Essential service. We've been working nonstop since the start of the pandemic. I don't even know what a change of scenery would look like for you yet. I cannot even imagine. I know that I'm so lucky, so lucky. Now, somebody asked me for my my LinkedIn link. They're having problems finding me, so I'll do that in a second. If you want to just hold on.
Anyone else have anything else that they wanted to share? Any questions for Christine? Oh, perfect. I see they got the link for your LinkedIn. And again, this session is recorded too. It will be posted on our YouTube channel, so you can rewatch later if you missed anything. Any final thoughts from anyone before we close it off? I know we're a little bit earlier today. Lots of reflective pieces. Definitely encourage you to use that workbook as a resource for you.
And if I may make a suggestion, we finished early. Why don't you've already committed this time to yourself. Why don't you take the time now to create that action plan?
Yeah, that's a great idea. So Christine, I do want to thank you for your time tonight. Really great tips and resources. Love the workbook idea on giving everyone, those hands-on tasks to do and to reflect on. Thank you guys for attending tonight. Have a good evening. And hopefully I will see you all next week. Take care. Bye.